So my background, I've learned this process about 20 years ago and been using it in a variety of applications since. What I'm going to present today is actually a combination of what I would present to a management team on how to put together a steering committee, how to organize and drive process improvement teams, facilitator training, and kind of how to manage the teams and some tips, and then some of the training that we actually take the teams through in using the 8-step process, which again will be repeated through this, is a variation of the Plan, Do, Check, Act function, and most important of it all is maintaining those process improvement steps. So if it's not apparent, there's reason for change, and you look at where we're at today, and you can go and look at BlackBerry, Blockbuster, Betamax. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's the old adage that every day you're not trying to improve, you're just one day closer to going out of business, to be extreme. But in our training, we look at the cycle time often, and you can see some examples there of, the old telephone to the future of cell phones, pit crews, and I have to give credit down there on the lower left hand. That's a surgical operating room from 1898, and I must commend them on their 5S. They've done an impeccable job there. It's beautifully laid out. So some of the things that are driving the change: external factors, global competition, regulations, changes in management internally. One thing is true: customers will demand more tomorrow than they do today. So in a lot of companies, and traditionally, manufacturing or process was owned by a few small cadre of experts. The competition and global economy has changed that. No longer can we manage by objectives. We have to engage the workforce. Traditional quality detection methods held the notion that people are the cause of quality problems. However, if you think about quality as a result of the resources transformed through processes into a good or a service, you start to become aware that people play an important part of that, and they're pretty valuable. So there's some basics behind PPI, and it's basically similar to Kaizen, but with a structure. So I like to distinguish the PPI process a little bit more as a tool set, but it's a process improvement methodology, and it's based on logical simplicity, straightforward tools and techniques on high-impact projects, and it's focused heavily on customer satisfaction. It's a logical and consistent framework, and it involves everybody. Teaching that common tool set gets everybody kind of on the same page, the same language, and so it's not isolated, that only certain individuals, the experts. And another point on engaging the workforce, one of my former bosses mentioned when we went through the process, and I'm sure that this is the rule with everybody on the phone today, nobody's in a position to hire more quality engineers, process engineers, more black belts to solve our problems. If anything, you're trying to do more with less. So the old adage of checking your brain at the time clock is gone. That's one of the basics behind the process improvement methodology, is getting everybody engaged, everybody aligned, or as one slogan said, are you heading west? Is everybody moving in the same direction, focused on the same things? And part of the process is the definition of quality. Everybody on here that works in quality today, it's very easy to define quality: customer, conformance to specification, capability to use, form, fit, function. But then it gets a little gray area, the customer satisfaction. What are the customer's expectations? And PPI drives to that in the quality, delivery, price. You know, if I have that new car, that new shirt, image, that reputation, and anticipation of future improvement. So when we look at PPI, we do not look isolated at maximizing or just an operation. You look at the whole value stream. So we may do something in one step, but it benefits the customer upstream. So we have internal customers as well as our external customer. So we need a steering committee, and we have to have somebody who supports this if we're going to have success. Senior management, and we'll set a policy and guidance. It's important to coordinate and deconflict with other initiatives. Many organizations have multiple initiatives taking place. New product development, new equipment, new initiatives, ISO, registrations. Everybody's got a lot of things going on. And PPI, or your process improvement methodologies and tools, need to be a part of that on equal footing with other initiatives. Otherwise, you may find some issues in getting to sustaining or driving process improvement. So it's important that you have a management team that supports and leads through these initiatives to drive change. So when you go to select a project, a lot of times we need the metrics. You need measurements, scrap reports, on-time deliveries, warranty, so on. It gives you an idea of where to focus your efforts. You start out with a small project, something that occurs often. If it's something that you only do once every 6 months, obviously that's not the right thing to get started with. And there's different ways to do this. I know a lot of people, we look at Kaizens, and we look at Kaizen as only a shop floor activity, where we take and have a 2 to 4 or 5 day full-time dedicated team. A lot of the teams that we've run and I've ran, we do more of a 30-day approach. And what that does is, in a smaller organization, or when you're doing transactional activities, you can't take somebody out of their position, out of their role for 3 straight days. There's nobody to backfill, or nobody's picking up the phone to answer calls from customers. But what you can do is give 2 to 3 hours twice a week dedicated to a project. And when you get your work done in sub-teams, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you really have options when you run Kaizen events and PPI teams in what's the best approach. Because a lot of times what happens is you want to run an event, and a lot of companies only think in the 2 to 4 or 5 day events, and you run into scheduling conflicts or managers who can't give up a resource for that time, that kind of time commitment. So something to think about in selecting the teams. So we organize the team. We have a team leader. I'm going to go over the roles here shortly. And obviously we like to have usually a customer, an internal process, the person who is either in a transactional team or a manufacturing process, if it's an internal team, and obviously 5 to 8 members. Again, just kind of repeating some of the background on some of the team requirements. And it's a focus on identifying value in the supply chain. So we have some team roles. The team leader is usually a shop floor or somebody who's got experience in a transactional area like customer service or purchasing, depending on what the activity or the team is, works with the facilitator or the project coordinators off the steering team to assemble the team. The facilitator really leads the team and guides them through the process. The facilitator makes sure that the logistics are taken care of, that people are available. When that calendar is set, we have a report out date. That puts a sense of urgency in it, so it doesn't go on. There's already a deadline, already a date to get this done. So we've got a project to focus on. Some of the roles in our meetings are a timekeeper, so we don't run over, we stay focused, and we keep to our commitments to management of the time that we're going to take, a recorder, a scribe, and a spokesperson. And generally, these are people on the team that rotate through the roles. One of the things that we do to try to keep fist fights or fighting down to a minimum, now that's a joke, I hope you're all laughing, is a code of conduct that we teach when we go through our training. Basic Kaizen adult learning rules: do not interrupt, dominate, attack the problem. Misspelling is okay. The idea is to get the points out. We often use flip charts. And we have one of our rules is a 3-knock rule. And that's just a polite way of when we get too far into the weeds on a solution or off topic, say, let's use the parking lot, and we just tap the table. And it's a good way of moving things along. The 100-mile rule is basically, this is a commitment. You're committed to the team, and the team is committed to the process. If production goes down or you're willing to walk 100 miles to take that phone call, then by all means, go take that phone call. But otherwise, everybody time is valuable. We all respect and appreciate each other's time commitment, and so we stay in the meeting, stay engaged. So what we do is a typical one-day training. This is a combination of slides, videos, exercise. We learn by doing, and the training can be modified, but this, I wanted to share with you some of the background. So we go through, we run 50-minute sessions. Everybody gets an agenda up front so they know when am I going to get a break? Are we going to have lunch today? You know, what are we going to cover? What are you going to tell me? So we go through a process that is, we tell them what we're going to tell them, we tell them, and then we tell them what we told them. It's a adult learning process of how we all learn, and we do a lot of activities through here as we cover the customers, the change process, waste and cycle time, and the basic improvement tools. I'm going to hit on a few of these items to kind of talk about how a facilitator will lead or manage some of these steps. I'm not going to get into any of the, or most of the quality tools. Everybody, I'm sure, is fairly familiar with most of these tools. And at the end of the day, we do the team charter. The team now, while we've went through all of those activities, we actually start writing up the team charter, getting our schedule going. Now, again, we can do this type of training. You can do it simultaneously with the project, doing it, breaking it down as you go through the steps, or a half day, taking out some of the videos and a few of the exercises. We first went through and invested a full day of training, kicking off the team, and then rolling right into the project. So we cover process improvement tools. And yes, meetings are a tool. And we kick off our project or our training in a combination of meetings and brainstorming. And so this is what makes PPI powerful. We have the code of conduct armed with simple tools to guide us through problem solving. The meetings and brainstorms, we all ask, first thing we start out with, everybody think about the worst meeting you were ever in. And right away, people start going too long, no agenda, don't know why they were invited, others dominating. Everybody gets a good laugh because we've all been in that same meeting. So we say, okay, let's fix that. Right now, let's look at how we come to strategy prepared to remove waste from meetings. We use the agenda, the timekeeper. We work in sub-teams. This is the old form where we used to do it with handwritten, and then we just scan it and print it out. We don't have to use, go back and write it down. We would do a wrap-up at the end of one meeting for the next agenda, what topics we were going to cover, and then just scan it and print it out. Hand it out. A lot of times we're working with folks out in the shop that don't have computers. It doesn't have to be fancy. In fact, this works a lot more efficient. And then we keep minutes. What did we talk about? What were the results? And the team leader generally keeps these and communicates to the team members. So one of the basis is when we come to meetings, it's not to do the work. It's to really discuss the results and what's the next steps. Did it work? Do we need to make changes? So again, we work in sub-teams, and this is what happens and works very well in the 30-day approach, because we know between Tuesday and Thursday we need to do some activity. In a Kaizen team where you're running a continuous, you break up and say, okay, team A, you go do this, team B, you guys go take care. So we have, we get back together and we identify the results. It moves very quickly. So for the facilitator, and these are some of the facilitation slides that we go through when training a facilitator, there's the upfront work, and some of you know it as the Kaizen newspaper or the pre-work. Then you have the group work where you're actually engaged in the team endeavor, and then there's a follow-up. So we communicate up front, make sure that everybody knows what their role is, what the schedule, their availability, that we have the room, resources, all the logistics taken care of. In the group, the team, we follow the agenda, follow the code of conduct, the team process, and bring in the technical resources. Sometimes we need an expert from outside. We need to call the higher power, the higher authority into the meeting to report or ask questions. The facilitator takes care of making sure that we are prepared, that we are driving an effective meeting. And then a follow-up. Make sure that the meeting minutes are distributed, that the activities are getting done. Sometimes you got to meet with managers to say, hey, we need to get this trial finished for the team by X, and make sure that everybody is moving along. One of the most significant parts, and I heard Norval talking about some of the upcoming events, is going through some of the change process. It is a very important part of this. When you're taking an organization, you're changing the way people do their daily jobs. A lot of us evaluate ourselves on our jobs. When you meet people, they tell you, what do you do? Or you ask them, what do you do? And they tell you. So when we go in and we run in Kaizens or we're going through a transformation, there is a significant emotional event, and I think we're all familiar with the 5 stages of change. We need to understand that it is not only normal, it is necessary. And we actually, this is out of our training slides that we present to the team, and have it with a video by Dr. Ben Bissell to kind of humorously go through and understand that it's normal. As we change our work environment, you're going to experience these things. And you know, all low morale is anger, and we need to allow this escape of emotion. There's the rule of thumb through the change process that 15% will jump right on board for the change, 15% will not accept change, and 70% are kind of that soft middle that, well, I'm going to wait and see where the team goes. And they got to understand, as a facilitator, people are looking at it, what's in it for me? What's the change? And need to communicate how it affects them personally. And some of the roles realize that it's normal, and people will not change quicker than their manager. That's why we need the support from the steering committee and the organization to help drive the teams. So we go through this process and we get into the 8 steps. We look at how do we manage a Kaizen event or a PPI team, and I kind of use them interchangeably. What's good about the PPI process and using these steps is that they kind of have a defined beginning and end. It puts a structure in place to drive an event, a process improvement activity, and make sure that you are coming out of the end with a successful endeavor. So the first step in the process is a project charter. And we want to keep it as simple and understood by everybody. And what we use is, I call them the magic words. It breaks down a project charter into pieces that we understand, and we use the word currently. And when you say, my on-time delivery is 80%, a logical response is, yeah, so. Resulting in what? Lost customers, angry customers, expedited shipping charges, for instance. So it follows with the goal that our desired state is. And what we want to reach for, depending on the project, we set a hefty goal. A lot of times we look at and we go through the process of looking at the value add in our steps. And we realize that only about 15% of the time in a process, or less, is actually value add. So an aggressive goal of 50% time reduction is not out of the reach. And we finish up with our process begins and ends. And we also generally include the metrics. What do we hope to impact? How do we measure that success? So you can see there some examples. Currently, our time to quote is 2 weeks. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Well, it causes problems, lost sales, so on and so on. So another example, these are for some more teams, and I'll kind of let you read them. So what this does then, it's easy for people to read. It's consistent as you run different process teams. It is a language that everybody can kind of get their head around and understand what our drive is, our process that we're looking to improve. So once we get our project charter and the team says, okay, we're going to focus on this operation. Our time to process an order from 7 days. We go into defining the current situation. So a lot of times we may want to just jump into it, or when we run a Kaizen team, well, everybody knows what the process is. We need to fix this, or we need to change that. What happens a lot of times is that there's a difference. We have people that sit 8 feet apart in cubicles that have 2 different ways of doing a process. And we go through and we do a flow chart. That was all back in the process improvement tools that I showed in the agenda that we do. And so we walk through and use some of these tools. So a control chart, Pareto, fishbone, graphs, customer data, whatever information we have available, we can pull in, and the training that we went through goes through and identifies. We practice the control chart, Pareto charts. the brainstorming, the check vote. And we wouldn't use the check vote here though. But so what we want to do is make sure that everybody understands the process. And many times, management does not even know the process. So the managers are not even aware of some of the steps that we go through in our processes in our organization, especially in the transactional activities. And some of those processes are legacy. So a lot of times when we go through those exercises, we find a lot of things that can drop out. So we want to simplify the process, take actions right now. And a lot of times we focus on the time and the steps because waste is bad and variation. So we will identify why are we doing that, because it was an old process we don't need anymore. So once we simplify the process, we test it before we go on. Well, let's make sure that this process now, if we've taken these steps out, that it functions and it does what we hope and intended it to do. Sometimes this makes a dent and makes progress towards the goal. And now we come back and we say, okay, so what are the remaining items, the remaining causes that keep us from reaching our goals and objectives? And this is where a team can get bogged down. This is, if you're familiar with the Tuckman model, storming, norming, performing, this is where teams often get stressed, because now we're starting to get into processes that we need to get a little more radical. If we're going to make a drastic improvement change to reach a goal. And we look for the hidden causes. A lot of times, if you try one tool, if that's not right, you come back and try to figure out. Use the team. It's eventually that uncomfortable silence starts to become really good ideas, out of the box thinking, and you start looking for what can we do, what can we try, and we start building on ideas. So we have a list or identified some opportunities. We start to discuss what would be the best results or things to try. And we create a new flow chart and a process to test. We think we have an idea or a means to improve the process significantly, improve throughput or quality, reduce waste. We test it. So we put together a plan, like I showed you in that sub-team format, like testing a new weld procedure or testing a new order process. We decide how are we going to test it and how are we going to measure that it gave us the results that we wanted. This is going to be the proof when we do a report out that this is the better way. This is the process that we want to follow. So we use a test, and then we use to standardize the process. And sometimes we have to get help from outside the organization. If you're ISO or other folks, what do we need to do to get this process? There's certain requirements, but boy, we know if we have these other parts, we can test it, we validated it, we're going to standardize it. How do we train it to other people in the organization, off shifts, so on. So we get a plan together to do that. Now the next step is really define future actions. So the team now has got through a process. They know, here's our new process. They feel good. They know, and they can demonstrate with data and facts that they've got a better process. But a lot of times in the course of running the event, the teams find other opportunities. And that is where the facilitation, the steering committee says, that's great. Now we're going to go up to the next upstream process or downstream, and there's other opportunities. So the report out, like I said, is already set, whether it's a 5-day, 3-day event, or a 30-day event. That drives this process. We use flip charts. I'm a big proponent of that. I do not believe in having one person sit at a laptop tapping away the notes or what the team is brainstorming, because that slows and locks everybody down. You got, we like to use the flip charts because we hang them on the wall and we tell the story from process, project charter through, and we show our work. Even if it's mistakes, even if it's ugly, it shows where we went and how we got to our conclusion. And sometimes those accidents of going down the wrong avenue open up new ideas and new opportunities. And sometimes we have the team, steering team come to the meetings, and you're ready when you went through this process and you have a plan together. So focus on those opportunities, use the metrics, and how we can use the process. So once everybody's been through a training, it's easier to get the organization using those tools. It's common that we put the control charts on the line to track time or defects, orders, and then it becomes what is known as operator-led process control. The operators, owners of the processes, begin to communicate using the tools and understanding the metrics and understand how their daily activities impact those key drivers of the business. So in order to maintain the gains, this is probably the most important part, is a follow-up. The steering committee, the top group, now in a steering committee, it could be an operations director, a general manager, or VP. To come back, the team does a report out. We have the team leader, the facilitator, sometimes the team. Come back in 30 to 45 days after the team through their process, and we ask, how is it going? How is this new process performing? And we usually have the data that we can look at and see if it's taken an impact. And there's also a punch list. As a manufacturing engineer or a quality engineer, sometimes the team assigns us a follow-up, a completion. And we put the date on it, we sign up, and we have to put our date, but we're following back. We know if I give the date, I have to meet it. And so this puts in the accountability and the responsibility. It communicates that that team is important. They put in the time. You agreed to meet certain activities by a time frame. This drives that process. This shows the organization you're now start that process of people using the tools and the organization now starting to take control of the process, improve the process, and you also discuss future activities, future action items. So, in conclusion, the PPI is designed to involve everybody. Everybody must contribute part of their job. As I said, we're not hiring additional quality engineers, manufacturing engineers, black belts, people who operate in the organization. Everybody has to contribute. And how do you get that is through a training and through a process. And so we're not dependent upon just the few individuals to make the decisions and tell people, because they don't know the process as well as the people that do it on a day-to-day basis. So that's all. I hope that was a benefit. If there's any questions, if you have, there's my contact information if you'd like any follow-up.
Well, thank you, Jeff. We do have time for questions. It's about 12 minutes before the hour. We really appreciate your doing this for us today, Jeff. Anyway, while we ask folks if they have questions, to please type them into the chat box. I'd like to remind folks, based on what I'm looking at here, there's a few of you who registered from a government email address. So there's a possibility that you may not have been able to view the webinar. You may have only been able to call in. I notice we have several caller numbers showing up in the list of attendees. So I don't have your identity, but if you could possibly send me an email after we're done, it'd be very helpful. So that way we make sure that your certificate of attendance gets sent to you without any issues. While we're waiting for questions to show up in the chat box, I'd like to remind everybody that the next webinar is going to be next Tuesday, May the 16th, and it is the Innovation Commercialization Process, a case study by Cheryl Talkoff. We hope that many of you will be able to join us on Tuesday. Several of you on this call today have already registered for that, and you should be getting the go-to-meeting information sometime here, if not today, by the end of this week. So you will have it in advance of Tuesday. We also are going to collect feedback from the event today. We will be sending you a link to a Qualtrics survey, and we really appreciate your feedback. It helps us to know what went well today and what we could improve upon. So if you would do that, it'd be much appreciated. Anyway, so I'm looking here. Are you able to see the chat box, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Don sent you a note.
Yeah.
I believe he's already departed.
Okay. Well, doesn't look like anybody has any questions.
Wow, you must have done a very thorough job, Jeff.
Well, I hope that everybody got something out of it. I tried to tailor it to folks that I thought would be in the process that know some of the tools, but maybe could pick up some things. Everybody runs Kaizen events to some extent, and hopefully it was just some refresher or some ideas, things that could strengthen or improve the process. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get a copy of your slides?
Sure.
Okay, if you send those to me, I'll make sure everybody that was online today gets a copy of them.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Well, we really appreciate everybody tuning in today. It looks like there's no questions. With that being said, we hope to see many of you online on Tuesday at noon for the next webinar for us. And until then, hope everybody has a good rest of the day today, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks, Jeff, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.